This is Herb Graham. Welcome to Insight. You know, life is a seesaw of good times and bad times. We need the downs in life to fully appreciate the ups, just as we need sorrow to fully savor joy. So when life flows at a low ebb, we can derive comfort knowing that we will ride the crest again. We'll find a way. Let's have Earl Nightingale tell us how.
This is Earl Nightingale with Insight. One of the most difficult facts of human existence to understand is what the great Irish poet William Butler Yeats referred to as the tragic joy of existence. We're born into the world and soon become conscious of our existence in it, and conscious of the fact also that we must one day take our leave of it. We're the only creatures with that consciousness. Even in the midst of our happiness, we're conscious of the unhappiness that exists about us at the same time. I remember as a child at the table being told to eat everything on my plate, that it was a sin to waste food because there were millions who, at that very moment, were going without food, were starving. I remember how even the prospect of a delicious and abundant meal was overshadowed by the realization that other children in other places were hungry. The sense of tragedy comes early in life. We learn that it is a tragedy when a loved one is taken from his family, and we become aware of the precariousness of our earthly existence. No matter how fulfilled a life may become, we're seldom without times when we feel strangely sad for no reason that we can articulate. Men and women who are admired and envied by the crowd are victims of inexplicable sadness in their own worlds because this is a part of Yeats' tragic joy of existence. Yeats himself, as all great writers, was aware of and perplexed by this. His own life was an overwhelming success. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature and numbered among his friends the great men and women of his day. Shakespeare knew of this too, and portrayed it through his characters even when they were kings and queens. The tragic joy of existence must be a part of every one of us, and understanding this, if we can see it and experience it as a worthwhile part of our lives. If we look to the end of every joy as a tragedy, we would be overwhelmed by it. Instead, we can savor the joy and move past its end to the next one. It depends on where we place the accent in our lives. As Emerson said, there are people who have an appetite for grief. Pleasure is not strong enough, and they crave pain. Mithridatic stomachs, which must be fed on poisoned bread. Nature is so doomed that no prosperity can soothe their ragged and disheveled desolation. They mishear and misbehold. They suspect and dread. They handle every nettle and ivy in the hedge, and tread on every snake in the meadow. And in another place he wrote, "A Schopenhauer, with logic and learning and wit, teaches pessimism, teaching that this is the worst of all possible worlds, and inferring that sleep is better than waking and death than sleep. All the talent in the world cannot save him from being odious." But instead of these negatives, you give me affirmatives. If you tell me that there is always life for the living, that what man has done, man can do, that this world belongs to the energetic, that there is always a way to everything desirable, that every man is provided in the new bias of his faculty with a key of nature, and that man only rightly knows himself as far as he has experimented on things. The next time you feel sad for no good reason, or even for a very good one, it's good to remember that occasional sadness is a part of our worlds and our natures. Without it, we couldn't savor our joys. One summer many years ago on Carmel Bay in Northern California. There was nothing between our house and the beach except the scenic drive along the beautiful shore. Early each morning, the surfers would begin to arrive. They'd park their cars on the drive and begin a ritual that would seem strange indeed to the surfers of Southern California. They would change into wetsuits. The water and the air in Carmel, even in midsummer, is too cold for the familiar bathing suit, so they wear wetsuits. It's quite a job getting into one of those skin-tight fitting rubber or neoprene or whatever they're made of diving suits, but they do it until the water is heavily dotted with them. Out there, on their surfboards, in that cold water, they look like seals as they wait for the right wave to come along. They transport their boards on top of their cars like skis, and the rubber suits seem to do the job because once they're in the surf, they tend to remain there for long periods of time. They're fun to watch as they paddle to catch the still unbroken large swell, and then as they catch the wave's momentum, stand up on their boards and start their lateral slide down the cresting slope. As the poet William Blake said, energy is eternal delight. But as I watched the young surfers arriving one morning, I was reminded of how we as human creatures adapt to difficult or changing circumstances. Without the warm water and temperatures that are taken for granted a few hundred miles to the south, the surfers of the north have simply adapted to the changed situation. They've found a way to manage, and so it is with people all over the globe. They adapt. They find a way. The crippled child is often the happiest of children. Old people adapt to the changes in their lives with no regrets. The people living in the Soviet Union make do with situations as they are, and they laugh and have children and look forward to events in their lives. The Eskimos, I'm sure, never give a thought to people who live in easier climatic circumstances, and the surfers of Carmel never give a thought to the cold air and water as they enjoy surfing where they are. Each of us copes with his circumstances as best he can and usually manages pretty well. But René Dubose has pointed out that while our capacity to adapt to difficult or changing circumstances has been the key to our survival on this planet, we sometimes carry our adaptive capacity too far and put up with circumstances that that we really should seek to change. Mind-dulling work, for example, or living under conditions of pollution that are slowly poisoning us and our children. And there's a tendency of those most in need of change to resist change of any sort as a threat to an existence that, if barren, is survivable. Sometimes we should not adapt, but actively seek and bring about change in our lives and circumstances. We should set and work toward goals in our lives that test the best that's in us so that we can progressively grow more competent. If our lives are not what we most want them to be, we should change them for the better. We can create the environment in which we seek to live our lives. Do you want to know how to annoy me? Well, I'm going to tell you anyway. It's to call me fella. The other day, I stopped at a marina to get gas for my boat, and as the attendant handed me the gas hose, he said, "Here you are, fella." In trying to define why that word raises my hackles, I've come to the decision that it's because of the anonymity of the word. Fella can be any man. I realized that the young man at the gas dock didn't know my name, but he could have used the word sir or captain, which is common at marinas. Fella was, on the one hand, much too familiar and cavalier, and on the other, too anonymous. It failed to give me the definition, I guess, that I need. As I handed him my credit card for the gas, I commented, "You'll see nothing on there about fella." In doing so, I leaked off a bit of my pique and tried to tip him off that was no way to refer to customers. As he handed me my copy of the sales slip, he said in a quick and departing way, "Thanks." He didn't say thanks, sir, which means he hadn't been trained properly, but he didn't say fella either. Maybe he'll stop using that pejorative word except when he's talking to a dog. People need recognition. And when I say people, I mean all people. I mean me and you and tiny babies and older people and boys, girls, people in all walks of life. When you're recognized, you come alive as an individual. If you're waiting in line to be waited on and the clerk leans out and says, "Sorry to keep you waiting, I'll be with you in a moment," all is well with the world. Your impatience and mounting irritability vanish. You've been seen and recognized as a separate human entity. You're no longer part of the faceless crowd. Surveys have proved that a woman will drive by several businesses of the kind she's looking for in order to shop at a place where she's recognized and called by name. People will shop at places that charge more if they're recognized and talked to and treated as individuals. The reason people want recognition is because its opposite, anonymity, is something everyone dreads. If when I brought my boat smartly up to the gas dock, the young man had called out, "Good morning, sir," or "Captain," or "Skipper," or best of all, "Mr. Nightingale," he would have cheered me up. With credit cards, a way of life where the attendant or waiter or salesperson can actually see the name of the customer's name is seldom used. I don't know why it's so difficult to get customer contact people to use the customer's name, except perhaps it's not a habitual way of our dealing with people. And forming a new habit of any kind involves a good deal of extra effort and thought and attention. It's interesting that the most important people in a business, those who actually come into contact with the customer, are often the worst trained. Training is not something you do and then stop. It has to be coped with on a daily basis. It's as important to the success of a business as its advertising and public relations. Leader. Those of us who have families as well as other responsibilities would be wise to give some thought to this idea once in a while. Norman Cousins, when he was editor of the Saturday Review, pointed out that there would be little difficulty in obtaining general agreement on the proposition that the job of leaders is to convert large problems into opportunities, to inspire people to meet difficult challenges, and to brood creatively about purpose. Not so long ago, he went on to write, it was possible for leaders to give high priority to ideas. Today, the traditional functions of leadership are being shattered. The velocity of change and the complexity of events make it almost impossible for the leader to spend ample time in the contemplation and pursuit of great goals and visions. Leaders today are preoccupied with endless minutiae and discontinuities. Less a manager than a mediator, the leader finds his daily agenda overloaded with situations that threaten to unsettle the entire organization. Whether we're talking about a college or a magazine or a business or the presidency of the United States, the top job virtually requires a full-time referee. Bickering between people and agencies, departments, and relatives on almost every level. Leadership is in danger of being enfeebled by discontinuities. Here, too, the prime casualty is thought. Norman Cousins ended his editorial with the words, even if the leader can do no more than to create an aura of respect for thought within the organization itself, he will have exercised the highest responsibility of leadership. Create an aura of respect for thought within the organization. Whether it's a business, a government, or a family, the job of the leader is to convert large problems into opportunities, to inspire people to meet difficult challenges, and to brood creatively about purpose. I'm not at all that sure that leaders generally understand that those are their primary functions. How about you? How good are you at converting large problems into opportunities, inspiring people to meet difficult challenges, and at brooding creatively about purpose? No question but that's the main responsibility of the leader. But as Norman Cousins says, we're so preoccupied by discontinuities, things that lead nowhere, by bickering, personal problems, and sulking petulance, by an endless stream of minutiae, that our major job has largely been lost sight of. When is the last time you took a long look into the future, or had the leisure to brood about purpose? I think it might be a good idea if a person is in a position to get away with it, to set aside an hour a day during which time he will be completely undisturbed by anyone. And if that's out of the question, maybe an undisturbed hour before the rest come to work, or before the rest are up in the morning, would do the trick, and give him some of the thinking and planning time he needs. The job of leaders is to convert large problems into opportunities, to inspire people to meet difficult challenges, and to brood creatively about purpose. I discovered an interesting new word today. If you're not already familiar with it, you may find it as interesting as I do. The word is heuristic. That's spelled H-E-U-R-I-S-T-I-C. And it means a method of teaching in which the student is encouraged to discover for himself. Plato believed, and many wise people have agreed with him, that it's the only way anything can be successfully taught. The word, again, is heuristic, and the idea is to teach in such a way that the student is allowed the joy and motivated to experience the pleasure and delight of making discoveries on his own. I received a children's book published by my friend Todd Tarbox. It's marvelous. The title is See the World and Make Up Your Own Book. I'll open it at random and give you a sample. Incidentally, there are no numbers on the pages. On the 2 pages facing me, there is on the left a picture of laughing children. Above it appear the words, I think that beauty is the most beautiful thing in the world. I think everything has a little bit of beauty in it. Flowers, nature, trees, all living things, buds, blossoms, sunsets, lakes, oaks, oceans, birds, peacocks, pictures, colors, fires, old-fashioned clocks, purple grape juice, snowflakes, and smiles. And it's signed Wendy, age 7. On the opposite page, there's a beautiful picture of seagulls perched on big rocks with misty trees in the background. Below the picture, there's a half page of white space, and at the bottom, the question, are there ways that you create beauty? It's up to the person reading and looking at the book to write or draw or do whatever he feels like doing on the blank space. In that way, he or she makes his or her own book. The whole thing is designed to draw out the creativity and ideas of the youngster working with the book. Many of us have, at one time or another, walked along the seashore and noticed very small sand crabs that quickly dart back into their tiny holes in the sand as we approach. Sometimes children will make a game of it and block the path of the crab, whereupon it will head off in another direction in an effort to reach its hole by a more circuitous route. And if one persists in blocking the small crab's path, it will soon slow down and in a comparatively short time give up and roll into an apathetic ball. Even when the barrier is removed, the little crab will not move for quite a while. Ordinarily, these little crabs seem quite lively and go about their game of surviving with apparent zest, and despite natural obstacles, they're winning. They are, however, easily convinced by superior force and cunning that they cannot win and will go into a state of apathy. Children are like that. They try so hard to keep their joy and curiosity and childish experimentation alive. They try again and again, but every time they're blocked, every time they're told that they must do it this way, by the numbers, this dull, drab, humorless way, a bit of their enthusiasm and joy is chipped away. If they're not shown the fun and excitement of learning, the joy and enthusiasm to be found in books, if they're not taught heuristically, they will soon join the joyless crowd marching in lockstep into gray mediocrity. They will become numbers, or worse, ciphers. If you have kids or grandchildren or nephews or nieces, get the book See the World and Make Up Your Own Book by Todd Tarbox. You can't forget a name like Todd Tarbox, a very small, very good publisher. Everyone respects the person of courage, the person who's developed what Sir William Osler, one of the wisest physicians who ever lived, called imperturbability. He used to say to his medical students, no quality ranks with imperturbability. It is the essential bodily virtue. Imperturbability means coolness and presence of mind under all circumstances, calmness amid storm, clearness of judgment in moments of grave peril. Imperturbability, he said, is a blessing to you and a comfort to all who come in contact with you. With practice and experience, you may expect to attain a fair measure. The first essential is never to show or express anxiety or fear. Then these will probably pass. He was right, and the secret of developing courage and imperturbability is a matter of willpower and practice. The secret is in Dr. Osler's lines, the first essential is never to show or express anxiety or fear. Then these will probably pass. William James, in his famous Principles of Psychology, said, emotion follows upon the bodily expression. We feel sorry because we cry, angry because we strike, afraid because we tense. We don't cry, strike, or tense because we're sorry, angry, or fearful. Refuse to express an emotion, and it dies. Count 10 before venting your anger, and its occasion seems ridiculous. Whistling to keep up your courage is no mere figure of speech. There's no more valuable precept than this. If we wish to conquer undesirable emotional tendencies in ourselves, we must assiduously and in the first instance cold-bloodedly go through the outward movements of those contrary dispositions which we prefer to cultivate. The reward of persistence will infallibly come. Dr. James was right. We need only act the part long enough, and it will become a habit-knit part of our very being. And because of that, any person can, with practice, develop courage and imperturbability, the kind of serenity that will remain unchanged despite the problems that beset us. I think that's good to know. It has nothing to do with heredity. As anthropologist Ashley Montague pointed out in the Journal of the American Medical Association, whenever we use the term heredity, we should remember that it is not equivalent to predestination, but that we can do something about influencing and even changing that heredity. Lord Moran, the famed physician to Sir Winston Churchill, in his classic study of men in battle, wrote that courage is a moral quality. It is not a chance gift of nature like an aptitude for games. It's a cold choice between two alternatives, the fixed resolve not to quit, an act of renunciation which must be made not once, but many times by the power of the will. Courage is willpower. Courage and imperturbability, serenity, can be developed over a period of time with daily practice. It means never flying off the handle and joining in a heated argument, never raising your voice or becoming flustered and red in the face. It means remaining calm and cool and collected in times of crisis. This is the kind of person I think most of us would like very much to be. And it's good to learn that any one of us can develop those qualities with practice.
Thank you, Earl. You've just heard that you can develop not only courage, but any quality you choose with practice and willpower. That means that to become, you must do. But how do you go about it? Well, our guest, Dr. Adele Sheely, says you must experience doing. Go out and learn new things. Develop your skills. Instead of saying, I wish, have the courage to say, I will. And only then you will have the power to do and become. Dr. Adele Sheely offers practical strategies for enhancing management skills, professional relationships, and individual careers. She believes that work is what can transform us, and has used this conviction to help people get more satisfaction in their professional lives. Dr. Sheely is the author of 2 books. One of them, Skills for Success, is the basis of a popular Nightingale Conant audio cassette program. And now, here is career strategist Dr. Adele Sheely.
Why isn't success automatic with all of the attention we give the subject? The workplace is saturated with materials focusing on success. So you should be able to wake up tomorrow morning with that project approved, that promotion or the raise granted. But insight gained in this way is not enough because it needs to be combined with action. And that's a lot harder than you'd think, judging by the number of people who are still stuck, wishing for a change. You come into the world with unlimited possibilities. You have a shot at trying anything you want to do, exploring, discovering, creating, developing, managing. Many of your own life stories, if you were to tell them, have had turning points and important choices. But for the most part, it hasn't been enough. In fact, people hardly scratch the surface. They work on a small percentage of what they can do and be. Experiences are important not only for what happens. They are what they mean to you, what they mean to others, how you remember them, and what they teach you about the world. With practice, you develop a sense of how to shape your intentions. That's what the experience of doing is about. It's the testing and stretching over time, your lifetime, of these boundaries of possibilities to find new aspects of yourself. It's impossible to know life's design from the outset, because that comes only from experimenting with knowing who you are and what you may become. Not what others think of you, but what you're willing to dream for your own life. When was the last time you sang in front of others, or danced, or tried a new kind of math, or learned to speak that foreign language you can only read, or took watercolors with you on a vacation to paint what you see instead of using your camera? See what I mean by shutting down early? Let me point out that you have been experimenting in small ways since childhood. You've been involved in diverse, random, short-lived activities that have opened doors for you. Maybe you've tried something once that backfired and decided never to try anything like that again, thereby closing off part of your life. So without being aware of what you're really doing, you limit your possibilities by conforming to a negative or a restricted past. That's all you have to operate from, unless you do something to expand or reshape your life. It's true the past is past, and you can't change what you did or didn't do. But you can start experiencing doing today. I've been collecting stories about achievers taking bold chances late in life. Some learn to fly small planes, others hike in the Himalayas, others deep-sea dive. And what they tell me is that they've learned to stop being so afraid. It's not that they're no longer afraid, but they've learned to prune their fears, which had stopped them from acting in direct ways before. And from experiencing doing, they realize that their newfound courage translates directly to their work, and they can now seize opportunities that they couldn't even see before, being actually blinded by overwhelming fears. Like redirecting a meeting's focus, or taking time out to rethink a project, or working out an alternative solution to a plaguing problem, or firing someone who deserves it, or creating a new service, or joining forces with another department on a special project. They prove that the experience of doing these outside feats tests their courage and leads them to trust their own judgments made in the air, underwater, or on a high slope. And that's directly transferable to judgments on the job. Think about your career now. What new courage would help you be more effective and productive? If it's hard for you to determine your own interests or strengths, know you're not alone. Do what so many achievers do. Get involved in voluntary civic commissions or philanthropic or religious or political organizations and try out different tasks. Fundraising or programming are just some examples of what you can become involved in. These areas can spark new ideas or projects, even careers, that exist right in your own organizations, right under your own nose. Experiencing doing isn't only for young people. In fact, it's a skill you must keep developing throughout your life, because these involvements show you patterns of interest. For example, Studs Terkel's real passion started as an undergraduate on the University of Chicago radio station, even though he got a law degree. And writer and editor Gloria Steinem, not knowing what she wanted to do after college, took a year-long internship in India, which stimulated her first political interests. These extracurricular activities develop personal style, chances, and careers for these successful people. At the top of every corporation are people who have developed skills in leading and motivating others, dealing with conflict and apathy, and winning and losing. All of it adds up to daring to dream of bigger, better, and new things. Their resumes show their experience in activities involving courageous behaviors many times. Read biographies of the best business people for examples of their experiences of doing many different things. And if something moves you, try to emulate it. If you think you'd like to develop more self-esteem, then take up what you've always wanted to do, skiing or bridge, dancing or computers, Little League coaching, or conversational French, and dare to immerse yourself and enjoy it. Or if you've been in the habit of always starting something new and being at the beginner's level, focus on something that you can learn to master. The experience of being advanced may be the critical part for you. Try these experiments. What will happen to you, as it has repeatedly happened to other achievers, is that you will also rediscover that success isn't an end in itself, the ultimate goal. Success is a vital process of moving and progressing.
Dr. Adele Sheely on Experiencing Doing.